Hello and welcome to a deck profile for Reguregnus. This is a top tier deck that has been top tier since it was printed and will continue to be top tier for the foreseeable future. It's still topping in Japan right now. It's a very solid grindy deck that has a lot of shield value, gets 6 attacks, and calls most of its cards from the drop zone, meaning it doesn't have to commit to hand to build a board. Commit from hand, rather. So overall, there's not really any weaknesses in this deck. It's got a lot of strengths going for it. And it's reasonably consistent too. It doesn't really brick that much. Even though it's piece reliant, it is usually pretty capable of getting those pieces out of the deck reliably. So this is a solid pick for BCS and BSF events, and will be unless we get another ban list announcement. It's already been hit by a choice restriction once. You can't play Harvest Elf in this deck alongside Riding Usurp Dragon, and Riding Usurp Dragon is better, so we got rid of our best grade 1. But without any further ado, let's look at the list. Starting with the ride line, you can play any starter. And then this is our grade 1 Deep Lands Grazcane. When this is wrote upon by our grade 2, you search for the deck for up to 1, call Deep Lands, reveal and put it to hand and shuffle. Then we have our grade 2 Deep Lands Zilgon. When this is wrote upon by your grade 3, you look at the top 7 cards of the deck and choose up to 2 cards from among them, discard them, and shuffle the deck. Then we have Deep Lands Reguregnus, our main Vanguard. Has an act skill. Once per turn, you can Energy Blast 2 to choose a card from drop and call to R. Pretty solid effect. Then we have Auto on V. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked. Counterblast 1 and retire 2 rear guards. Not a real cost because we get them back from the drop later. And you choose up to 1 grade 3 card of the Reguregnus in its different card name from this unit from your drop, and you write it as stand, and it gets drive -2 until end of turn. And then when you would ride, the unit you place is placed with all the power and crit that this card got from triggers this turn. That's really solid and mitigates the one downside of rewriting Vanguards as opposed to restanding Vanguards. So this dodges the anti-restand heal, which is very powerful, while still giving us all the advantages of attacking with a second Vanguard. Really, really strong effect. We only have 1 ride target, if you're wondering. Then let's get into the main deck. We have 3 copies of Persona. We are a 6 attack deck, and all of those attacks are from the front row. Then we have 4 copies of Deep Lands Reguregnus Athanasios. This is our ride target. It has, when it's placed on V by the ability of your Deep Lands Reguregnus, you Soul Blast 1 and choose a Deep Lands Reguregnus. From your drop, call to R, and at the end of that turn, you put that unit on V as rest. So you're essentially just going to Soul Blast the one you just wrote over and call it as a unit. That's our 4th and 5th attack right there. Then, when this unit attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and this unit was placed on from drop this turn, this unit gets drive +1 until end of that battle. So we reclaim one of those drives, going from twin drive into single drive, which is really good. Then, continuous on G, for each grade of your Vanguard with Deep Lands in its card name, it gets 5k shield. Capping out at 15k shield once you're on grade 3, making this guard like it's a trigger. Really solid effect. We're playing 4 additional grade 3s more than most decks would be, but we're getting extra shield value out of it. So our shield value is actually above average when it should be below average. Then we have our signature order, Call of Deep Lands. This card is a very complicated effect. It's a mandatory card to play 4 of, and you need to play 1 of these every turn from turn 3 onwards. So let's go through the effect. A lot of people misplay this, so be very particular about how you read it. And make sure you double check when you're resolving it to make sure you're doing all the power increases correctly. So, this card can be played from drop, and you play this with Soul Blast 1 and retire rearguard if you have a Vanguard with Reguregnus in its name. Then, when you play it, choose up to 2 cards with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from your drop and call them to R, and your Vanguard gets 5k until end of turn. Then you perform one of the following according to the number of cards with this name in your bind or in your order zone. Sorry, if you have 0, you put this card in the order zone, and then if you have 1 or more, so if you've already played one this game, you bind this card instead, and you choose a Call of Deep Lands from your order zone and give it the effect that the power increase of its continuous ability gets plus 5k until end of turn. So really solid power increases there. Then we have the actual continuous effect in the order zone. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, all of your units with Deep Lands in their card names that were placed from drop by the ability of your card with the same card name as this card, or with Reguregnus in its card name, get 5k. So that means These two will be giving a 5k power increase. And the 2 units you call from this will be getting a 5k power increase. And then up to 10k if your opponent's on grade 3 and you already have one in order zone. So essentially on your Persona Ride turns, it's plus 10k instead of plus 5. So to clarify and summarize, because I see a lot of mistakes, when you're going second, your Vanguard gets 5k and nothing else happens. Or sorry, when you're going first, your Vanguard gets 5k and nothing else happens. Then when you're going second, all the rear guards you place by this card ability and the re-ride from your Vanguard and the unit called by the re-ride are going to get 5k. But the Vanguard is still only going to get 5k. Then it's up to 10k once your opponent is on grade 3 and you've already played one, but the Vanguard will still only get 5k. There we go. That's the summary. Most often I see people accidentally add 5k too early or forget to add a 5k from the opponent being on grade 3, or I see them add 10k to the Vanguard, something like that. It's very common. Nobody I know has read this card and resolved it perfectly on the first try after the first time reading it. So don't feel too bad if you mess it up, but do make sure you double check the card a lot when you're playing this in an actual event. And it's important to also know all the restrictions and limitations on this when your opponent is playing the deck, because you don't want them to cheat and put an extra 5k on their units. Then we have 3 copies of Rotting Usurp Dragon. This is a grade 3 13k that when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard is placed, you call this card from drop to R. It's an optional effect, which is very important in case you're playing against the deck that can bind your units. Sometimes you don't want to call this. You're going to place it every time you ride up or when you Persona Ride, and it's going to be usually the unit you sacrifice for Call of Deep Lands. But then in the battle phase, when you re-ride into Athanasios, you'll call this again to get your 6th attack. So it's a pretty essential card to the deck, although you can live without it. If you brick on it, it's not the end of the world as long as you get one within the next few turns. And you only need 1 per game, but we have to play 3 for consistency reasons. Then we have our grade 2s, 4 copies of Deep Lands Orgody. This card has the effect that when it's placed on R, if you have a Vanguard with Deep Lands, its name, you counterblast 1 or put a card from hand into soul to draw a card. And if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, it gets 5k power until end of turn. And then it has continuous on Guardian that it gets an extra 5k shield if you have a Deep Lands Vanguard. So above average shield value again. The card draw effect is really solid. In the early game, you can use that first CB you got on this. And in the rest of the game, you can use CB if you've been taking a lot of damage. But most of the time, you're going to want to put a card from hand into soul because you'll have something like this card or your Call of Deep Lands that is something you want in the drop. And putting it into soul with this and then soul blasting it out with another effect is going to be an easy way to do that while generating value. Then we have 3 copies of Deep Lands Maideth. This is a Teethfall clone. All the Teethfall clones have the same first effect where you Soul Blast 1 and look at the top 5 and call a unit with Great Lesson Removal to your Vanguard or add a normal order to hand. If you played this other than by unit card ability and you played a normal order in the same turn. We have called Deep Lands, so we should always have a normal order active. Then it has this unique second effect. When it attacks, if your unit was placed on R from drop this turn, you Energy Blast 2, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and till end of your opponent's next turn, that unit cannot intercept, and it cannot stand during the stand phase. And then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets 5k until end of that battle. Really strong effect, especially considering how many decks have superior interceptors in this format. We have Beligiacro for all Dragon Empire decks for the most part. We have Ichigon's Gordon. We still have Block Horse out of Heartluru because people are still playing that deck. Even this deck has a 10k interceptor that will be in play sometimes. It's just really common for you to have something useful to turn off. If your opponent's also playing a high-value attacker that you know they will have trouble replacing, you can stun that and force them to call another one if they want to use that effect that turn. Most commonly in this format, you'll be doing that with Zero out of the Ichikon deck because it's a card that some versions only play 2 copies of. And so stunning a Zero, forcing them to either call over it with a new one or move it to back row and attack with something else is pretty strong. The energy cost does conflict with your Vanguard skill a little bit, so keep that in mind when you're going first. Then we have our ace units, Mutual Feelings Maiden Pence. You can only play 1 ace unit in your deck. and you can only use a unique skill once per game. When this unit is placed on R, other than during the battle phase, this unit gets 5k until end of turn. And then you get Energy Blast 3 to look at the top 7, choose up to 1 card from among them, discard it and shuffle, and then you call a card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from drop to R. Really strong effect. That first half alone would make this a must include for the deck. But the second effect is also really good. When it attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, until end of that battle, this unit gets 5k. And if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, it also gets 5k. So on the turn you play it, it's a 25k base, which is phenomenal. That means this card will keep up with all of our Deep Lands cards, even if we have the full effect of our Call of Deep Lands order. It's a reasonably solid alternate attacker to Maedith for those reasons. Also, just hitting 10 and drop is not that hard, and this card will also help you get there. So we can potentially have this card and Philander active on turn 3 reasonably frequently. Then we have Conceited Noble Philander at 4 copies. When you place this on R from hand, you look at the top 5 cards of the deck, you choose it to 1 and discard it and shuffle the deck. And then it has Continuous on R during your turn. If your drop is 10 or more cards, this unit gets plus 10k. So it's an 18k booster or attacker. Phenomenal number. It'll help us hit really big attacks in the mid and late game. It helps you compress the deck. It helps you find pieces because we want all of our pieces in the drop zone for the most part. It kind of just does it all. And this card is just overpowered. It's in a lot of Stoicheia decks. It's probably one of the best Stoicheia cards ever printed, and it's one of the best grade ones in the format entirely. So this is a mandatory 4 for this deck, in my opinion. You can get away with playing 3, but you cannot get away with playing none, in my opinion. Then we have 2 copies of Knight of Amity Roderick. When your other grade 1 or less rearguard once per turn is retired by your card ability, you can Soul Blast 2 and draw a card, and it gets 5k. So basically, you'll retire one of the back row to Reguregnus after boosting with it, and then you'll get to Soul Blast 2 and draw a card. It's not a bad effect. It's a nice way to gain some value off of all the stuff you're retiring. However, it does cost Soul Blast 2, so sometimes you'll have to be careful or you won't be able to use this multiple turns in a row. But again, our Orgody puts a card from hand into the soul, and if we're Persona riding, we should have enough of everything. You have an alternate choice here, and I really do mean alternate choice in that, I think it's almost 50-50 on lists that play Roderick versus this card. This is Unwavering Maiden Yolanda. When this unit boosts, retire 2 other grade 1 or less rearguards and draw a card, and this unit gets plus 10k until end of that battle. So this doesn't cost soul, which makes it a bit more easy to activate, but it does require you to retire 2 other things, so it'll clear your board out more, forcing you to potentially have to commit another card from hand to set up a board on the next turn. But otherwise, it's a great card. It's also good when you don't have the full Philander back row, because then you're retiring rearguards that you want to replace with Philander anyways when you're going for a kill. This is also able to let us empty our entire board for against decks that matters, like decks that can bind your units or lock your units. So Yolanda is pretty great. It's honestly just personal preference whether you play Roderick or Yolanda. Then we have Deep Lands Glian at 1 copy. If you have a Vanguard Deep Lands and its card name, it gets all of the following effects. When it's placed on R from hand, you look at the top 3 cards of the deck and you choose up to 1 card from among them, discard it, and shuffle. And when this unit is retired from R by any player's card ability, you counterblast 1 and draw a card. We're retiring our own units quite a bit, and so we're able to get that effect basically anytime we have the spare counterblast to pay for it. It's also a Deep Lands card, so that means when you call it with the order or with your Vanguard skill, it's going to get the extra power from Call of Deep Lands. So it can be as big as Philander on the right turn, making it a very good card to play, but we don't need more copies of it. We have the 1 in our ride line if we really need an impromptu 18k booster off of our Vanguard's Energy Blast 2 and Call from drop. So we don't necessarily need this card. We can't activate the Counterblast and draw every turn because we need 1 CB a turn for our Vanguard skill. If we did this, we'd have fewer attacking turns because we don't have countercharge. There is a countercharger for this deck. It's just not very good. So usually 1 copy is enough. It does let you also do patterns where you boost the Vanguard first, and then you get to draw a card of this and retire it, and then re-ride, and the rewriting Athanasios will be threatening all on its own anyways, especially via triggers. Then we have our Sentinels, 3 normal unit perfect guards, and 1 Elementaria. This is pretty much the standard for every deck in this format. Then we have 1 copy of Protection Twincast. It has synergy with being discarded or being milled out of the deck. It's just overall a pretty solid Regalis piece. We can't play any of the normal order Regalis pieces because we need to play Call of Deep Lands every turn. So it has to be the Blitz order ones or Fire Regalis. And Fire Regalis we don't really need. Once we have 1 copy of all of our important cards in the drop zone, we can build the board we want. Then we have our triggers, starting with 4 heals. You can play the effect heals, the anti-restand ones if you want. Worth noting, this deck is immune to the anti-restand heals because we never restand. We superior call and reride. Then we have 4 vanilla crits, whatever artwork you like. And then I'm playing 4 effect crits, but it honestly doesn't matter. Just play 4 more crits of whatever artwork you find the most pleasing. Then I'm playing 2 copies of Serene Maiden Lena and 1 copy of Frenzied Eris. So fronts do not benefit this deck unless you hit them on the Athanasios attack, and then in that case, all your front row units get 10k. But because you're going to retire usually your front row to Reguregnus, you are going to not get the benefit of the front. A front is just a 10k to van with no other benefit. So a draw trigger is better in those circumstances. Fronts have higher shield value, so we can't get away with playing 3 draws. We do need this 20k shield front occasionally, but the draws are going to be slightly better for when we're doing our Vanguard attack pattern. These are a little bit embarrassing when you're going second. Your opponent attacks with their grade 3 Vanguard with a +5 on it for some reason, and a front would be a 2 to pass, and a draw trigger is not. That can be bad. Also, when your opponent's not on grade 3 and they early rush you really hard, draw triggers are only 5k shield and they might not protect you, but it's fine. I've literally never lost a game because I was playing a draw and not a front. But I do think that the shield fronts are technically a little bit better, and that's what you're going to see most people play is 3 shield fronts, or occasionally you'll see a list with 2 shield fronts and 1 draw. It's been a while since I've seen a list with 3 draws. I think that was back when the deck first came out, people did that. But the shield fronts are going to be a little bit better on average. This is, for me, is just personal preference. I do think it's a little bit better in this deck specifically, but I am in the minority opinion. And then we're playing 1 Stoicheia Overtrigger, Source Dragon Deity, a Bless Favor. This card gives you 1 of every trigger effect. When you hit it as a drive check, it's just really insane. So that is the deck. I'll show a Persona Ride kill turn in just a second. All right, so we're looking at a Persona Ride turn here. So we'll start off grabbing my dice box 1 second. We'll start off by drawing for turn. We drew a Philander, that's really good. And then we'll Persona Ride. Which is going to give us a very, very important 10k to the front row. That's going to scale. This is essentially a plus 60k power to our board when you think about it. So Persona Ride is absolutely vital in this deck. Then we draw for the Persona. We drew a Persona Ride, setting us up for next turn, which is pretty convenient. So we placed a Vanguard, so we'll call our Rotting Usurp out of the deck, but it's not going to be there for long. We're going to immediately activate a Call of Deep Lands from drop. Soul Blasting 1, and make sure to Soul Blast the Athanasios from the previous turn out of your soul right away. It would be very embarrassing to swing Rearguard, Vanguard, only to find out you don't have one of these in drop because it's stuck in your soul. So we'll retire this for the cost of the order, and now let's resolve the order's effects. We're going to call 2 things from our drop, and 9 times out of 10, we're just going to call these 2 cards. Then the continuous ability will be applying 5k to these, but because we have played a second one, it'll be plus 10. Then we're going to resolve the effects of the units we just called. We'll start by resolving this one. We're going to put As you can see in our hand, we have a copy of Call of Deeplands. We're going to put that straight into Soul and draw a card. We drew a copy of Athanasios, which is pretty good. It's 15k shield. Then Maedith will activate, and what better card to Soul Blast than the card we want to play from drop? So we've got a nice little bit of value there. And now we check the top 5 to see what we get. In this case, depending on what the opponent has on board, it might be better to attack with this Pence, but regardless, we're going to call it in the same column as Maedith in case we do decide to commit to the attack. We are going to assume we have the energy we need. We probably spent, we went to 6 last turn, we probably spent 2 energy last turn, and so we'll have gained up to 7. So this will activate, we'll go down to 4 energy. We'll check the top 7. So it is best out of this pile to get the Philander, because 1, that's a card that's nice to have in the drop, but 2, these are higher shield value than Philander. So if we draw into these later in the turn, these will defend us more, whereas if we draw the Philander later in the turn, it's only 5k shield. Then we pick a card from our drop to call with this effect. Whatever we call is not going to get the power of our order, so that's very important to keep in mind. So in this case, why don't we call a Philander? And let's say we call it here. And then we do commit to switching this, which means this is currently 5k power. It's going to be effectively the same power, so it's fine. The Philander does not activate because it was called that way. And then why don't we just call another Philander from hand in order to make sure we have the highest attack power possible. So we're going to check the top 5. Or sorry. We have a Vanguard skill left to activate, so we would Energy Blast 2, we'd call from drop. In this case, it's either Philander or Deeplands Glean. This card is slightly better because it'll be the same amount of power, but we will get a useful effect if we retire it to draw. So this card will also be getting +10. Okay. We have in our drop a total of 5, 10, 14 cards. So we will be getting the full 10k power on the Philanders. I'll show what this pattern will look like if we went into Roderick instead here in a second. Look at these. These units are this unit gives itself 5k when we activated the skill, and this will give itself another 10k when it attacks. So all of our attackers should be 35k normally on a Persona Ride turn. So the typical average pattern is going to be swing for 35, swing for 35, and then if you have Glean, you'll swing boosted on the Vanguard. If you have Philander, you'll swing unboosted to make the second attack bigger. But for now, we're showing what Glean can do, so we'll swing boosted. Our Vanguard is going to be plus 5k from the order, and then 10k from Persona Ride, so this is going to be a total of 28, 38, 46 with Twin Drive, a very difficult number to guard because Twin Drive essentially inflates its power by 20. So we hit a perfect guard and we hit a grade 2. No triggers, but that's fine. We got either a perfect guard or some good shield value out of the opponent regardless. Then, end of battle, we resolve our Vanguard skill. We're going to retire 2 cards. Glean will activate. We can counterblast 1 and draw a card. We're going to re-ride Athanasios. Athanasios will activate. We can Soul Blast out this Reguregnus, and we'll call it here. And then that card that we sacrificed earlier will come back here. This will get 5k from the order when it's placed, and 5k again because we have one in the order zone already. So it'll basically essentially be +5 overall to the Vanguard. If we'd hit any triggers, it'd be bigger, but for now, it's a mere 33k with 1 drive. We hit a crit. Let's just go for the biggest number possible. So we'll do this. And we'll put a crit on it as well. So then over here, we swing with our smaller column. This gets no power from the order. So it is a mere 30, it's 23, 33, 41. Not a bad number still, regardless. We could make it 51 if we put the trigger over there, but I went for most threatening in the event that they don't have another perfect guard, because they probably have the perfect guard the Vanguard already. This will be 25, 35, 48, 58, 66 with a crit, demanding a perfect guard or over trigger guard or their entire hand. Very deadly. And then we would rewrite at the end of turn. Now, let's show what that would have been like if instead of Glian, we did Roderick instead. Yeah. So I'll shuffle a bit. So we would have the one Philander we started this turn with. If we want to go for a maximum value turn, I can show you that too. So we can actually still call Glian, but we can call Roderick instead of a Philander. That's what we'll actually do. And we'll assume we still have the same two attackers. We'll show the Maidith and the Organy. Important to note that you generally want Roderick to stick around for the post-Vanguard swings, because he'll only get his power plus 5k after you retire two things. So that means that whichever attack you're going to swing with unboosted should be the first attack. And that means we're more likely to swing Maidith first, because we can take shield off the board with that. So we should call the Maidith in the same column as the Roderick most of the time. So here would be our 35k attack. Rolling that back down, we'd be energy blasting our last two in this scenario, but well, we wouldn't have played ace units, so we'd be at 7, and we'd go down to 5 for the Vanguard, and then 2, or 2 to go to 3 for this. We'd stun whatever their highest shield value card is, or whatever their most valuable attacker is, making this turn a little bit more annoying to deal with. Also great if we're pivoting into playing for another turn instead of playing to kill the opponent right now. Then let's say they didn't hit the defensive and we swing for 35k here. If they did, we would boost with the Philander for a plus 18k attack. Then we swing with our Vanguard. We'll swing boosted again because of the Glian effect. We're going to want to retire this. So this is still plus 10. So this would be 10, 23, 28, 38, 46 with Twin Drive. I put some cards back in the deck, so let's shuffle it up so we potentially get different drive checks this time. And we get a crit and a crit. That's, we'll say we get one crit, just for the sake of argument. What would this be? Oh, Roderick, that's fine. So this gets plus 10 and a crit. 56 was quite a steep thing to guard. They probably perfect guarded this, to be honest. Then we would counterblast and retire two things. Let's counter this and this. Retire these two. That way we make sure that we get our Roderick activation. And then we rewrite into Athanasios. We call this out. And then we call a Rotting Usurp. So no matter what, you pretty much are always going to lose your... Did I put the Rotting Usurp in the hand or something? Or in soul? Oh, there it is. Okay. Take away its power. So you can either call the Rotting Usurp to the Roderick column in order to get a 36k attack, or you can do this, at which point now you have a 23, 33, 41k attack. This still gets blocked by two 15s, but guards over, but hits over a front and a 5k. Whereas this gets guarded by a front and a 5k. But I think this number is a little bit better because this number will be huge, and this number will still be 2-card guard. 43 would be a nicer number, but we're not going to hit 43. So then we'll activate this. We'll Soul Blast 2, Soul Blast out 2 Deep Lens cards, or whatever things in Soul you have that are stuck, and we draw a card, and this gets 5k. And then we would Counterblast 1 to draw a card off of Glian. So, as you can see, this deck can plus quite a few cards when it really wants to. It's very good at converting Counterblast into cards. We would get one drive check off of this, and we'd hit a crit. This would also have that crit from earlier. It would have gotten the power 5k increase from the order. So this was already attacking for 43 with a crit. And then if they won to pass this, they just explode here. But realistically, they would have 2 to pass this or perfect guarded. So again, let's do this. This is also going to get plus 10k from the order. And then put the crit over here. This is getting plus 10. We swing with the crit just to try to kill them. If this is the mid game, they're probably at 4 or 5. So this is 33, 43, 53, 61 for the crit. And then we swing this column, and there's no power here, but it's 23, 36. And then we reride. Roderick himself stays in play, so you can use Roderick every turn. You'll be losing 2 soul, but if you're your persona riding, you'll be getting a soul, and then if you activate Orgody, you'll be getting a soul. So Maedith will make the soul management a little bit tricky if you're activating that every turn, but you can always just get double Orgody to both either build 2 soul or to just not have a soul blast spent, but then you have to counterblast to draw. So that's the deck. The attack pattern is not too hard. It's just rearguard, rearguard, vanguard, vanguard, rearguard, rearguard, because of the slight potential of hitting a front on the second vanguard swing, especially if you're playing the full 3 shield fronts, which I'm not. Yeah, that's the deck. You just then take all the cards you drew and you guard with them, control your damage. You only need 1 CB to function every turn. You don't need to use Glian, and you don't need to activate Orgody for counterblast. So you can just try to take 1 damage per turn and then guard everything else. And you can always choose to take your safest damage options. You don't really need to gamble on the Vanguard swing because you have enough shield value usually to either 2 to pass it or no pass it or just perfect guard it. And as you can see, we're selectively adding cards a lot of the time. Philanders are selectively milling. Maediths are selectively calling. But we also have some raw card draw. But generally, our trigger count is going to be pretty dense. This deck doesn't usually lose to deck out either. Because we're usually doing our mills in the form of like 1 or 2 at a time. We're not milling like 3 cards ever. So in a long grindy game, we are just guarding a bunch and then throwing 6 attacks to the opponent, depleting their hand, and then guarding a bunch. And that's usually going to kill the opponent well before we get to deck out. Especially since they need to hit defensives early in our attack pattern to be able to guard everything usually. 35 into Vanguard into like a 50 or 60 number and a like 30 or 40 number is really annoying to guard and deal with constantly. And if we start hitting triggers on top of that, it becomes untenable to survive. If you're going first and your opponent doesn't hit defensives, you'll probably just delete them. If you're going second and your opponent doesn't hit defensives, if they didn't plus a lot off their first grade 3 turn, you can sometimes just steal a game, even if you're at high damage. And even if you do like take a crit you weren't expecting and you go up high damage, between Glian and Orgody, you have a lot of ways to recover card advantage and then play more defensively for the rest of the game to make up for the fact that you took extra damage early. So that's the deck. It's a very solid, consistent, reliable, good against most of the field. If you're playing BSF and one of your teammates doesn't know what to play, I strongly recommend shoving this deck into their hands. Assuming that they don't want to just play Ichikon or something. But you can only have 1 Ichikon on a team, and so this deck is a very strong contender for your team's second slot. But that's all for now, and I'll see you next time.